Hey everybody, I'm Jack Rita with Future Pastimes. I'm a designer on Dune-themed games and expansions. There was a recent discussion on Board Game Geek entitled, Realistically, How Long Does It Take to Play This Game of Dune? And there's a link to that article in the description if you want to chime in on that discussion. But I thought I'd do a short video here to talk about it from the perspective of somebody from Future Pastimes. Now, I'm not one of the original designers. They're my dad's age. But I do work on all of the expansions for it. And I've been playing Dune since the early 80s. So I've got a lot of games under my belt, and I have a good sense of how long the game takes. Now, the box has 120 plus minutes, and that's definitely true. It doesn't really give you the full picture. I consider Dune what I like to call an epic board game, and that is for two reasons. One is because of just how immersive and thematic it is. I think that the Dune board game is the most thematic game that I've ever played. I don't think anything else is more thematic than it, just because I feel like it really captures a lot of what happens in that book of Dune and in the Dune universe at large in a really great and immersive way. But the other reason is because you need to strap in, because this could be a long day of board gaming. I think a good analogous game is Twilight Imperium. It has a reputation of being a long day's worth of gaming, and Dune certainly can be that. Now, the interesting thing about Dune is that you have the turn track with 1 to 10 turns. And it was 1 to 15 turns back in the Avalon Hill days, but that is, I think, probably a little bit absurd. But 1 to 10 turns. But that doesn't mean you're playing the game for 10 turns. The game can end on turn 1. And hopefully it doesn't. And if it does, it's because a lot of people really just weren't paying attention. And you do need to pay attention. And you need to communicate with the other players. And you need to do some stronghold blocking or some deals. Or just, pointing things out like, that so-and-so can just land here and move there and win the game. So let's be mindful of that. Don't everybody go after the spice or spend the turn just saving your spice and not shipping down. You really have to think about what other players can do, and the Storm Order is a big part of that. But most games go more than one turn. And a lot of games can go 7, 8, 9, 10 turns. And each turn can go from 30 to 45 minutes, maybe more. It just depends on the skill level of the players, how new they are, how much explaining of things needs to occur. Are you teaching the game before you're diving in? Because that's going to be a factor. And even if you've gotten some instruction at the front, there's some refreshers in there. A lot of the phases in a turn are very quick. It's going to be the bidding phase. That's a little bit longer. Then you've got the shipping of movement, because there's a lot of discussion about what can happen, who should do what. And then the battle phases, if there are a lot of battles, those are going to take some time as well. The rest of the phases, though, they're really quick. They're all under a minute. Very quick, easy to get through. There's not much to it. It's not a complicated game. It's actually fairly easy to learn. However, it is a game of many nuances. So new players don't necessarily know everything that could be in the treachery deck and all that can happen. They're not necessarily memorizing all of the advantages that the other players have. There's a tendency, even when you're bringing in new players to the game, to want to push in and get those advanced advantages in, because they are more fun and more immersive. They do add a lot of interesting decisions and consequences, intrigue and thematics to the game. And I prefer to play advanced, although I tend to also teach people basic. Now, one of the things in recent years that I've been able to take advantage of is the fact that we put out this one right here, Dune Conquest, aka Movie Dune. Now, that is designed to be a short and quick, and short and quick, maybe that's the same thing. It's a speedier version of Dune. It condenses and distills a lot of what happens in classic Dune, but streamlines it in many ways. You still have the same battle mechanisms, which I think are very elegant, a really great battle system, and makes it very accessible. It kind of condenses some of the faction advantages, keeps them simple, simplifies all the shipping and movement. There's no bidding, you're just buying cards. So it speeds a lot of that up, but it gives you a sense of what that Dune experience is going to be like. And so I like to bring new players into the Dune universe by teaching them that, having a couple of games of that. The box there says 30 to 60 minutes, and I think that's actually very accurate. Most of our games of Dune Conquest are about 45 minutes long, give or take. And I have done a Day of Dune event where we played a couple of games of that, and then we set up and we played Classic Dune. And they're much easier to learn that game because now you're just basically explaining what's different. You're saying, all right, here's how the bidding is going to work. And so you're not just buying the cards. It is just one deck that everybody is using instead of two different decks. And so that's a simplification in a more complex and deeper game. So realistically, I know I've dragged this out a little bit. Realistically, a game of Classic Dune is going to be probably 3 hours, give or take 2 hours. So it could be 5 hours. Could be done in an hour or so, maybe 2. But I think 3 is a pretty good average, 3 to 4 hours. There is a movement of people who are saying maybe even 10 turns is too many turns. And I think that there's a lot to be said about saying we're going to purposely play a shorter, potentially shorter version of Dune. We're going to do a 7-turn game of Dune. I know people who play the Gale Force 9 edition, and they just say, yeah, it's 15 turns. And those people, I don't know, they're good people, but they are a little bit mental. So that's fine if you are, like I said, strapped in for a long game of Dune. But realistically, this is an epic board game. It's going to be multiple hours. If you do have a lot of newer players and you are kind of coaching them and reminding them about things they're doing and letting them know about potential stuff like, yeah, there's effects in there that could blow up the shield wall. The storm could move more than just the small number that it's been moving. Somebody could play a card to move it 10. These things can happen. You need to be aware of that. Your turns are going to be a little bit longer. So I've seen games of Dune where it was basically close to an hour per game turn. And that was with saying, all right, we're going to have alliances and we're going to go off and have meetings with our allies during or before bidding, before shipping and movement, before the battles. It's good to say, let's implement some limits in there. So in a tournament setting, they are desperate to try to get to the end of the game and not have to have some sort of mediation. And so because of that, they limit how much time players can step away from the table to speak to an ally and those sorts of things to make deals. And I think that's actually a pretty good system. When we play Dune on Tabletop Simulator, we have a 2-minute timer that we use for shipping and movement primarily. It's not strictly enforced, but it's a good reminder, and it does speed things up. And I do have a physical sand timer in my physical version of Dune that we also try to implement as well. The other thing that I try to do, if I do have newer players in, I have a video where I talk about the treachery deck, where the top half, a little over half of the treachery deck are all the base game cards, and we put the expansion cards down at the bottom of the treachery deck, and we let people know what's in that treachery deck, what they can expect to see for the first several game terms with the auctions, and let them know that the special stuff is coming up. You'll probably see that turn 5 or 6. Just depends on how many cards we're going through and the rate that we're doing it. So, and we've even have a special card that lets us know, okay, we are now out of the base game altogether, and that card just is set aside. It's just as a marker. And then we say, flip your reference over, and you can say, these are the other cards that are going to be in there. So it's a good way to get new players into the action without feeling like they're overwhelmed. And for that, I would say with new players, don't bring in the extra modules. They don't necessarily add game time, but they do if you're having to explain them and remind people about what they do. So with experienced players saying, yeah, we're going to have tech tokens, that doesn't really add any game time in a meaningful way. Same thing with Nexus cards. Even discovery tokens. I know that you're like, all right, we're somebody has the potential to go after a discovery token rather than going and fighting it out in a stronghold, that they already could have avoided going into the stronghold. A lot of times we go after the discovery tokens because we can't get into the stronghold because they're blocked. And I think that the shield wall rules are a good way to speed up a game. And there are some other things that you can do to do that. And I'm all for it. I think I would rather have maybe a 3-hour game of Dune than a 5-hour game of Dune. Just depends on what time we're starting, as maybe there's something else we want to play too. So yes, the answer realistically 3-4 hours, but it can go longer. It can go to 6 hours. It just really varies a lot on your skill level and familiarity with the game and your playing style. If you're very social, then that's going to add time to the game. And it's a game that wants to be social. It's better when you are involved, even if you're not directly the one who's making the action, just trying to influence people. That's what makes this a great game. So that's what I got to say on this. Chime in the comments if you've got other pearls of wisdom that you want to share about realistically how long it takes to play the game. We did a invitational. We played 3 games of Dune in basically under 2 hours. So, but those are games where it ended on turn 1 or 2. So even with experienced players, you can have it. Somebody's just had the right mix of cards, and the other players had the wrong mix, and they boldly went. They said, "I'm going to smoke them because I've got them." So that does happen. It's a game where these things are possible. They're not common, though. Turn 1 victory, not a common thing to happen in the game. So you're probably going 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, 6, 7, could be 8, 9, 10. There you have it. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.